Welcome to Mr. Bill's History 102, Test 2, or the final, however you want to call it, Summer 2026 review. We're going to go over the test, we'll talk about it, and you can watch and hopefully do well. Question number 1. Pick 4 items from Russell Kirk's definition of conservatism. Describe and analyze the concepts. The answers are to be academic, respectful, balanced, and reasonable. If you go to the Lecture 10 page in the module section, 1950s, you will get what you need for this question. Here you have the OpenStax chapter you need to read. Here's the PowerPoint presentation as a PDF file. What you'll need is this handout. Okay. I do have a Lecture 10 video. I also have a video portion. So personally, I don't need to, I'm not going to go over every little thing on this because you actually have a video where I go over it. And so I'll kind of briefly mention some stuff. But you have the handout up there and then there's a video where I actually go over it. And it is on my YouTube channel. Like, comment, and subscribe. And so, anyways, I hate it when people do that to you. Anyways, so you can do that. There's an audio transcript of the lecture too, and some interesting stuff. Anyways, so what you'll do is you'll go through the lecture, read your textbook. We will go to the handout. So if you remember in lecture 4 or 5, somewhere in there, we talked about progressivism as an ideology, right? We went over, I had a handout on it. I went over it in detail in a video on, American progressivism, right? So this is the other side, so to speak. Now that we're in the 1950s, we're talking about modern American conservatism. Okay. And conservative is the word we use politically, right? Liberal, conservative, conservative, liberal, progressive. Marxist is what we use. We use all kinds of words to say things. And so, we went over progressivism, and so now we're going to go over modern American conservatism. And so, I talk about why we need to study the topic. Why do you need to know this? Okay. Why do I think this is extremely important as a topic? As I have here, the American education system and popular culture is overwhelmingly, quote unquote, progressive, and I'll even say Marxist in political culture and outlook. Okay. So what this means is you as most Americans, or we as a society, for students, you get put into a progressive bubble. Okay. You get put into an intellectual, progressive, Marxist, liberal, whatever you want to call it, bubble. And you think that's the whole truth and that's the truth, and sometimes it's wrong. And so it distorts things about American history. And so for a lot of U.S. history and popular culture, there's an extreme lack of balance. Okay. The other issue why you are in desperate need of this section is like I said here, American history is taught mostly from a progressive, and I'll even venture to say Marxist, political viewpoint or lens. So you are left with little understanding of other alternative points of view, other alternative interpretations. The number one example is the Great Depression. Students, I teach the Great Depression differently than most other instructors. Okay, I don't pray to FDR. I don't think FDR saved America. The FDR's New Deal prolonged the Depression and made it worse. Okay, that is a very different interpretation than you get from the popular culture, and with 98% of your educators. You put me in a room with 10 other college instructors, and I'll probably be 1 or 3, maybe 3 at the most, but the 1 to 3 that think the same thing I do. Anyway, maybe 4, I don't know, but pretty low. Okay. So I teach U.S. history. I point out other interpretations because you need them. You are desperately in need of them. You are put into an intellectual bubble from the popular culture, from your education, from kindergarten on up. Most of your instructors are politically left. Most of your instructors are liberal, progressive, Marxist, whatever term you want to use, politically left. Okay. And so you get put into this intellectual bubble. Okay. My job is to get you out of that bubble and teach you accurate history. Okay. And so that's why I go over other points of view. Also, the other issue is one of the reasons that I think we have a lot of trouble today with civil discourse is we have too many people in society that can't and won't understand other points of view. They think their point of view is 100% correct and the other point of view is completely false. And they even turn it into a moral thing. My political opinions are moral, therefore other political opinions are immoral. No wonder you get it. No wonder you're in this society today where people don't want to understand each other. People don't want to understand there are different opinions and different points of view. There are other ways of understanding things, and so it gets difficult to have a civil discourse because of that. We want to call everyone names. Two people want to call, instead of listening to a point of view, they just want to scream Nazi and fascist and racist and sexist and all that, rather than listening to the opinion, listening and understanding the point of view. Okay, civil rights movement, communism, all that. What is the point of view? Okay, it. So I think the issue is just we need to understand different points of view. Okay, and this is my other big point. Understanding a point of view doesn't mean you accept it. You can understand the point of view and still reject it. Okay, I have plenty of opinions. There are plenty of opinions. I understand opinions. I still reject them. So anyways, it is completely 100% you can understand somebody and still reject the point of view. Okay, so that's why it's really important for you to study this. Okay, extreme. I'll be honest with you. I'm willing to bet this is the first time in your life you've had any kind of a discussion of American conservatism that was balanced and neutral and not from a hostile, politically left, progressive Marxist perspective. That's why this is important. This is probably the first time. This is probably the first time you're going to get a discussion from a neutral academic point of view. Okay. And even sympathetic, I guess. But you know what I mean? You get it? This is your one chance to get out of Plato's cave. Take it. I mean, this could be the first time. And only time if you seek to continue to ignore things. Anyways. So I go over the origins. I go over the origins of our left-right thing today. That comes from the French Revolution. So you can talk about 19th century ideology, World War II. Okay. So, here's the first point of your answer. Okay. Modern American conservatism. You can define it in a couple different ways. The first way you can look at it is the three main pillars of modern American conservatism. So if you want, you can talk about these three items. Okay. Traditionalism, libertarianism, and anti-communism. Traditionalism. A respect for the traditional morals and institutions and values and the goodness of America and Western civilization, despite its imperfections. Okay. Of course, America is flawed. Of course, Western civilization is flawed. It's made up of human beings. It's gonna be imperfect. I mean, to act like it should be this robot anyway. So, despite the flaws, traditionalism argues for respect for traditions. We We only exist today because we are on the shoulders of great people in the past. Okay, you got it? People in the past have created, therefore we benefit. So we should absolutely be respecting tradition. We should absolutely be respecting those that suffered and worked to build our society today. It boggles my mind half the time, this desire just to bash everything in the past. You know, it's ungrateful. It is ungrateful. It's immoral, and it's judgmental. Okay, so I mean, traditionalism, respect for the traditional morals and institutions of the past, the value and the goodness of Western civilization, and Western civilization is good. Okay, you want a case in point? Western civilization abolished slavery. Europe and France abolished slavery in their empires in the 1830s. We abolished slavery in 1865. Slavery was legal in places like Saudi Arabia until the 1970s. Okay. There is value in Western civilization. Okay. Western civilization is good, despite its imperfections. The United States is good, despite its imperfections. Did a lot of bad things happen? Yes. Has America always lived up to its ideals? Of course not. Okay. I mean, right? Of course not. But the value and the goodness, that's traditionalism. Traditionalism is also the morals, that the 10 Commandments in the Bible should be followed, even if they're 4,000 years old. A lot of people today, they reject any kind of moral compass if it's old. Oh, that was 100, that was old. No. There's value in traditional, foundational law and religious morals. Okay. The 10 Commandments have stood the test of time for 4,000 years. Okay. They represent a basic foundation for society. Hammurabi's Code, the Law of Moses, Hammurabi's Code from Mesopotamia. Okay. The basic tradition and function of society has lasted for 4,000 years. Okay. Because the 10 Commandments, okay, they give us a basic mode of living. Thou shalt not. Okay. Just, so the idea that you don't throw away things just because they're old, just because you don't like them anymore. They provide something for society. Okay, they provide a foundation. My personal opinion and historical argument is, one of the reasons why our society today is such chaos is because we have rejected the foundations of our civilization. We reject Judeo-Christianity, and we've rejected Western civilization. Okay? And so you get it. When you rip out the foundations of your civilization, you're gonna have problems. Like you just are. I mean, and so we're having issues in just the last 40, 50 years, whatever, or 20, whatever, because America as a society, we have rejected the foundations of Western civilization and Judeo-Christianity. We've rejected them. And so we're struggling to come up with something new, cobble together something else. Okay. There's going to be some rough times. Okay. And study Western history. When civilizations have ripped out their foundations or rejected them, they either fall apart or they're completely new in a lot of ways. I mean, and a lot of times they just fall apart. Rome, Byzantine, China, every Chinese dynasty, but anyway, so that's traditionalism. Libertarianism. Classical liberal ideas on liberty and the free market economics. So modern American conservatism is focused on libertarianism, meaning classical liberal ideas of the market. The free market is best. Okay. Private enterprise is best. Okay. Capitalism is better than communism. Okay. Because why? It's freedom. The free market. Okay. And so that's the libertarian strain in modern American conservatism. The focus on business, free markets, capitalism, private enterprise. Okay, the government has little to no say. Like the government should not be picking winners and losers in the economy. The government shouldn't be heavily regulating the economy from that point of view. Okay, and then anti-communism, anti-collectivism, anti-communism, anti-Marxism, whatever you want to call it. Opposition to command economies and extreme progressive ideologies, such as fascism, which I misspelled, and communism. So, collectivist fascism and communism are collectivist ideologies. They're collectivists that reject. What do collectivists reject? Freedom, free markets, morality, Judeo-Christian morality. They reject God. They reject religion. They reject freedom. The state is going to control your life and regulate things. Okay. And so anti-communism is a complete rejection of command economies and collectivist. I instead of progressive, I probably just should say collectivist. Collectivist totalitarian ideology. I should have put totalitarian too, probably. So if you want, you can say totalitarian or collectivist ideology, right? So you can talk about that. The next part you can talk about is Russell Kirk. Russell Kirk there's several examples of, when you talk about Mr. Bills, what is the philosophical birth of modern American conservatism? You can say a few names. William F. Buckley is one. I'm choosing to focus on Russell Kirk. I've read a lot more Russell Kirk than Buckley, I guess, and so I like Kirk. But Kirk and Buckley, but I'm going to focus on Russell Kirk. Russell Kirk provides the philosophical foundation of modern American conservatism. He was a writer, a philosopher, a historian. He understood history. He wrote a ton of books. His three most famous ones are The Conservative Mind, The American Cause, and The Roots of the American Order. And actually order, that actually brings me to one other thing I could bring up, but Roots of the American Order. Okay. Yes. I'm worried about my hair right now. Anyways, what is the roots of the American order? Okay. That actually kind of brings me to the other thing. Progressivism tends to want change of the social order and outside of it. Okay. More conservative philosophical thinking says reform should happen within the order. And so one way to look at progressivism and conservatism is, where does social change come from and how much should you do that social change? Progressive ideology or philosophy says progressive change comes from without the social order, meaning, like the lower classes or the proletariat influenced by a worldwide ideology of Marxism destroys the social order. And what did they do? What did the Bolshevik Revolution do? They shot the social order. They took Tsar Nicholas II, took him out into the snow, and shot him and his family. Okay. And so, from one way of going, how does social change happening? How does social change happen? One way of looking at it is social change happening by destroying the social order. And that's the thing when you look at it today. What do some people look to today? Rejecting American traditionalism and the foundations of Western civilization that have stood for 2,000 years, or more. If you want to count the Ten Commandments, 4,000 years. But anyways, and so you're destroying or radically changing the social order, and comes from without. More conservative philosophy says change comes slowly within the social order. You don't destroy the social order. You change it slowly over time. Okay? You change it slowly over time. Another way you can look at it is that, it's earlier in my lecture here, but there's two revolutions, right? What did the French Revolution do? Okay? That's a progressive revolution. What did the French Revolution do? The revolutionaries, what did they do? They murdered the social order. They started cutting heads off. Started with the king and worked their way down. Okay, you get it? The French Revolution, especially the Jacobins, they destroyed the social order. They murdered it. They murdered they guillotined the social order. And then they tried to set up a new social order. What came after that? What came after the French Revolution, people? Tyranny. Napoleon. Napoleon came out of the French Revolution. Tyranny, right? And so, from a progressive point of view, the French Revolution is the good revolution. The social order was destroyed. The social order was oppressive. The social order was corrupt. Well, what did we do? We guillotined the social order. Okay? Started the king and worked our way down. Right? And what came after it? Napoleon, a tyrant. Totalitarian, a tyrant. Napoleon. The good revolution, the more conservative revolution, is the American Revolution, right? Think about it. What did we do? What did the American colonies do with their social betters? We kept them in power. Think about it. Think about all the wealthy elite colonists before the Revolution. They were our leaders afterwards. We put them in power. In the American Revolution, change happened within the social order. The American colonists did not destroy the social order. You still had African slavery. The political and economic elite were still the political and economic elite. We didn't guillotine them. We put them in power. We said, please be our presidents. Please be our governors. Please be our senators. Okay, you got it? The American Revolution is the conservative revolution. Okay, it's a revolution from the top. The only big change that we did was what? We removed the super top, the British government. That's all we removed. You get it? We maintained the social order. Right? Change came within the social order. And so that's one way to understand progressive ideology and conservative ideology is looking at the roots of the American order. Order, what is it? Should it be preserved? Should it be rejected? Should it be blown up? Should it be guillotined and shot? Does change come within the social order? People, what came after the American Revolution? What came after the American Revolution? A stable, prosperous nation that was fine for the first 80 years, and then you had the Civil War. But you get it. From one point of view, what happens when you destroy the social order, like the French Revolution, and which I think a lot of people are trying to do today? What happens? You get a tyrant. You get totalitarianism. Napoleon. Okay. What happens with conservative revolution, with social change within the social order? After the American Revolution, you had 8 decades of relative stability and peace. Obviously I'm oversimplifying, but you had a stable country that wasn't tested severely until the 1860s of the Civil War. So actually more than 80 years, like 90. And so you get it. One revolution that destroyed the social order got a tyrant, Napoleon. The other social order, change within the social order, got a stable country for 8 decades. 9 decades. So that's that book, the Roots of the American Order. That's right. That's why that book's kind of important. Is that it delineates what I just bored you with for 10 minutes. It kind of delineates the roots of the American order. Is we have a social order, right? Anyways. So next, the 4 ideas. So Russell Kirk one time was asked, what is the definition of conservatism? He gave 12 ideas. I'm not going to bore you with them here. You have another video that can do that for you. But you just go through and you pick 4, right? And talk about them. Give examples of them. Analyze them. Okay. The rest of this is just interesting information. People, I'll give you this one little factoid or opinion. Well, I think it's a fact, but it might be an opinion. But if a little point. There's another reason why you as students don't know a lot about the American Revolution. Sorry, about modern American conservatism is America does not elect conservative presidents. We've only had two in the last 126 years. Calvin Coolidge in 1923 to 29, and Ronald Reagan in the 80s. Okay. Americans don't elect conservative presidents. Okay. We elect Democrats. Liberal and progressive, or populists. Okay. We do not elect conservative presidents. That's another. That's why our popular culture is heavily progressive. Our culture is heavily progressive because, and Indian data, whatever word you want to use, but we're as a society we don't elect conservative presidents. Only two in the last 126 years. Calvin Coolidge in the 20s and Ronald Reagan when I was a kid in the 80s. Okay, you get it? 20s and the 80s in 126 years. Only two. Okay. I mean, so some students are shocked by that. And what I've said was, well, what about Eisenhower? Eisenhower wasn't conservative. He almost ran as a Democrat. What about Nixon? Nixon was not conservative. Nixon governed as a liberal Democrat. He might have been a Republican, and he was anti-communist. Nixon was anti-communist. That's it. He governed as a liberal Democrat. Okay, so Nixon's not conservative. What about the Bushes? Bush and Bush? No, not even close. Okay, President Trump is not ideologically conservative. President Trump is a populist. Okay, he's not an ideological conservative. He's a populist. Americans like populists and progressive Democrats. Okay, that's who we elect. Okay, so. Anyways, I mean, Jimmy Carter, you could argue, is a conservative Democrat, I guess. But anyway, the point being, we either elect Democrats, some version of the left, or populists. That's who we do not elect. We do not elect conservative presidents. We just don't. So, anyways, and then the last point. That's just my opinion. I mean, I'm obviously giving my opinion on Republican president. Eisenhower, not conservative. Nixon, not conservative. He governed as a liberal Democrat. He was a liberal Democrat. The Bushes not ideologically conservative. Okay. And President Trump is a populist. So he's not ideologically. He's a businessman. So that would be the, let's go back. That would be the libertarianism. Does Donald Trump believe in capitalism and the free market and brain over? Yeah, I mean, that's his career. So, I mean, that would be, and that's the thing. Nixon, anti-communist. He wasn't really the other two. Maybe the traditionalism, but definitely he governed as a liberal Democrat. Trump, the libertarianism, President Trump is a massive capitalist, right? I mean, so he's a businessman. But outside of that, not really, right? And so can you see why the deficit varies a little bit, right? You can point to some things, but not others, right? The Bushes, the Bushes business, right? And kind of anti-communist, but not, anti-communist to a point, but they, but they're kind of that too. But anyways. So again, you have this video that goes over, and you can watch that kind of a thing. Okay. Anyways, 35 minutes on one question, so you guys are in trouble. I apologize for taking 35 minutes on that. Let's go back to the test and see what question 2 is. Okay. So that was question 1. Question 2. Analyze the counterculture of the 60s, or parts of it. What were their political and social aims? Any music styles. Okay, so you'll study rock music in the 60s. All the rights movements. Civil rights movement, women's rights movement, gay rights movement, Chicano movement, Native American stuff. any of the rights movements, hippies, free love, anti-Vietnam War, anti-war. There was a free speech movement in the 60s. We're kind of the anti people. We're today we completely we don't believe in free speech anymore. It'd be a shock to people in the 60s that we would we have a movement to stop free speech, which is the funny thing, in this in the 60s they had a free speech movement. Today in the 20-teens and 20s we have a stop free speech movement. So it's a little bit different, but anyways, in any counterculture, drugs, the free love movement, the feminist movement, all that counterculture. Discuss it. How did it affect the 60s? You can compare it to the 50s, right? Why are the 50s and why are the 1950s and the 1970s? Why do they appear so culturally different? What happened? The 60s. Okay, so this is a big one. Go back to your lecture, and you can do all kinds of study on your own. Any rights movement, the anti-war movement, the free speech movement, and I know you're shocked by that. We have a no free speech movement today. We don't want people to have freedom of speech today, but back then it was freedom of speech, right? Free speech movement, civil rights movement. Okay, rock and roll. Go listen to rock music in the 50s and rock music in the 60s. They're different. Okay. The counterculture, the rock music became the vehicle by which the counterculture influenced popular culture. Okay. So, this should actually be a fun question. You can look up stuff you're interested in. Okay. Music, art, rights movement, anti-war movement, hippies, free love, drug, sex, and alcohol, experimental drug, you can study it all. So this should actually be a fun question. You get into things that you like. Hopefully that's the right. But anyways. Next, trace the development of the Vietnam War from 45 to how's Vietnam? So that's kind of a broad question. So maybe it's too broad. But why I'm leaving it kind of open-ended is from your study of the Vietnam War, what stands out to you? So this is actually a good question for you, because if I had a multiple choice test, right? What if you studied something and it wasn't on the test? You kind of have to know what I know, kind of a thing. And you should. But what? You know what I mean? But this is an open-ended question. This is evidence of why essay tests are actually better for students. Okay? What about the Vietnam War stands out to you? The development of the Civil War from 45 to 6. So some students go chronologically. Some students go by president. Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford. Okay? Some students go by president. Some students just go chronologically. Some students focus on certain aspects of the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War is a what? It is a proxy war. It fits nicely into the Cold War, right? Capitalism and communism. The free world and the enslaved world fighting each other. What is the arena? Vietnam, right? The enslaved nations of Eastern Europe, Russia, and China fighting against the free countries of the West. Western Europe, Western Hemisphere, and America, right? So you can talk about that. How does it fit all into this Cold War idea? In the lecture, if you go to the Vietnam War lecture page, there's the lessons of Vietnam. Some students talk about that. Some students go over the lessons of Vietnam. Okay. So this is kind of a wide open question for you. What have you learned about the Vietnam War? What sticks out to you? What is significant to you? What have you learned, kind of a thing? And so anyway, so that's a good question. How does it fit into the Cold War? It's a proxy war, right? And so you just discussed that. Next, describe Iran-Contra. describe the Iran-Contra scandal. Okay. Okay, so you'll go to the lecture on the 80s for this question. Okay, the 80s. You'll start with this slide: background to Iran-Contra. Okay. You have to know about Iran, terrorism in the 80s. Definitely got to know Hezbollah and Nicaragua. Okay. So when you discuss Iran-Contra, so the first paragraph, you want to discuss the background to it. What do I need to know about, what's the background? You need to know Iran and Iraq were at war in the 80s. That Iran had been labeled a terrorist state by the Carter and Reagan administration. Right? You need to know Hezbollah is a terrorist group in Lebanon. Hezbollah means Army of God in Arabic. They are funded and supported by Iran. Okay. But still today. I mean, and so, Nicaragua, during the Carter administration, this U.S. support, the U.S. supported, U.S. liked, Somoza regime gets kicked out by leftists, whether the communist, socialist, Marxist, leftist, even it's a debate. Some people don't want to call them communists. Just left wing people, I guess. If you want to call it that. I mean, how communist they were, I guess is the argument. But communist, socialist, whatever name for the left politically you want to call them, took over in Nicaragua, right? All right, so you got to know the background. Okay. So you'll talk about that in a paragraph or two. Okay. Mr. Bills, I don't want to talk about everyone. The student that gets full credit for this question will talk about Oliver North. You need to know Oliver North. You need to know his role in the Iran-Contra scandal. So you can ignore everyone else if you want, I guess. But there's one name I want to see, other than Ronald Reagan. We have to see Oliver North. He was the money man. He was the gopher. He did all the dirty work. Okay. His fingerprints are all over Iran-Contra. Because when the big dogs, McFarlane, Abrams, Poindexter, Katie Weinberger, when they said, hey, we need some grunt work done, guess who the grunt was? Oliver North. And so you have to know Oliver North. I should see his name mentioned in your answer somewhere. Okay. What are the administration goals? You want to free the Lebanon hostages. You want to help the Contras. So what you'll do is you divide the scandal into two parts. You want to help the Lebanon hostages and you want to help the Contras. Okay. So here's a map. I mean, just to explain this map. Okay. We sell weapons to Iran. We sell missiles, not weapons. We sell missiles to Iran. Okay. What is Iran supposed to do once they get missiles? They're supposed to go to Hezbollah and tell them to release hostages. Hezbollah and Lebanon had kidnapped a couple dozen Westerners, U.S. and European journalists, preachers, CIA agents. And so we're selling missiles to Iran, through Israel, by the way. Selling missiles to Iran through Israel. Iran is going to go to Hezbollah, theoretically, and go release the hostages. Okay. Now, how does that help Iran? Why would Iran considers us the great Satan. Why would they do that? Remember, Iran is in the middle of a war with Iraq. They need the missiles. So Iran goes off. They use their missiles against Iraq. By the way, if your question is, was Iraq a pro-U.S. ally during the 80s? Yes. So yeah, we considered Iraq friendly to us. Mainly because they were fighting Iran, who we didn't like. But what you have here is you go behind their back and sell weapons to Iran, that they're going to use the missiles on them. So Hezbollah is supposed to go. By the way, to end the story, to go ahead of the story a little bit, how many of the couple dozen hostages were freed through this? One. Okay, so now you have a bunch of money, right? Iran bought the missiles, okay? So now you have a ton of money, okay? The money goes into Saudi Arabian and Swiss bank accounts. And Oliver North is to take that money from Saudi Arabian and Swiss bank accounts, and used that to help the Contras. Okay, in Nicaragua, the Contras are the anti-communist peoples fighting the Sandinistas, who are some version of left, depending on your point of view. They're anywhere from vaguely left wing to complete communists. So depending on kind of what you think. The Contras they're anti-communist in that they don't want the Sandinistas in charge. Anyway, so that's in a nutshell. The next few slides go into more detail, and so you can go into that. Okay. The story breaks. I do want you to mention this. Okay, I do want you to mention this. Where is it? Okay. I do want you to mention it. So Nixon had a scandal, right? Nixon had Watergate. It ended his presidency. Iran-Contra didn't end Reagan's presidency. Why? You can talk about personal things, like Reagan was a lot more likable than Nixon. But here's the big thing. When Nixon found out about the Watergate break-in, what did he do? He helped cover it up. He denied it publicly. The White House had anything to do with it. Okay. What did Reagan do? When the press started getting word of what was going on, what did Reagan do? In November of '86, he had a press conference. Okay, he had a press conference and said, "This is what we did." And he fired multiple people right then and there. North fired, Caspar Weinberger fired, Casey allowed to retire. So everyone's name that was appearing in the paper under this new scandal, right? Reagan fired him. Okay. So that's one difference between Reagan and Nixon. Nixon didn't come out and go, "Yes, bad things happen, I'm firing everyone." Reagan did. Reagan went on, he fired everyone that had their name on it. Oliver North's name was all over the papers. He got fired first. Okay, all over the go. Right. You had hearings, the Iran-Contra hearings, right? This is another reason that the difference between Reagan and Nixon. Nixon had a John Dean. John Dean ratted Nixon and everyone out. Okay. No one implicated Reagan. Everyone shielded Reagan. Okay. The closest anyone got to Reagan was Oliver North repeatedly said in his testimony to Congress, "Everything I did was approved." He wouldn't say who approved it. Everything I did was approved. He wouldn't say who. He wouldn't, just, I'm a patriot. I did what I was ordered to do. I saved America. I fought the communists. I was trying to save hostages, his testimony, very patriotic rhetoric. Okay. And so that's the other issue, is Reagan didn't have a John Dean. No witness said Reagan didn't do everything. Okay. So you can talk about Reagan, and so there you go. Okay. Okay, next. So yeah, just go through there and Contra. If it's not your favorite scandal by the time you're done studying it, I didn't do my job. I think it's a great scandal. It's a fantastic scandal. Okay. The last question. The last question about the Cold War, end of the Cold War. Describe one place communism fell peacefully, and one place it fell violently. For this last question, end of the Cold War. So I have a whole video for it. Just watch the video. Sorry, it's like, well, you're a teacher. So, well, I am. Here's the video. So there's a couple ways the Cold War or communism fell in Eastern Europe in 1989, peacefully and then violently. And you can pick one of the others. So paragraph 1 country, paragraph 2, the other country. Go into as much detail as you can. Specifics. Was there a new president elected? Like Poland, it was Lech Walesa. Czechoslovakia, it was Václav Havel. On the violent part, the most popular choice will be Yugoslavia, because that turned into a several-year war, right? Slobodan Milosevic, and that was my college. So your guys's college years was a war with Russia and Ukraine, and then I guess we bombed Iran. So my college years was Yugoslavia coming apart, Bosnia, Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Croatia, and so that was the war for my college years was that. So, anyways, so go to the videos. Just one country peacefully, one country violently. So I talk about all of them in the lecture, and so just review that. Thank you for your time. Sorry if I got a little long-winded. I like talking about history. So, anyways, so email me if you have any questions. I'm always available. I have students come to my office and talk about history. Let's do it. Okay, I'm happy to do it. Have a great day and good luck.